Good evening, everybody. How are you? Thanks a lot for coming along tonight. It's great to have you along, and it's wonderful that you could come out on a Tuesday night. I think this is a really timely presentation, and so we could not have known a few weeks ago when this was planned what a timely presentation that it would be tonight on increasing our well-being in such stressful times. My name is Mel Renfrew, and I'm the Lifestyle Medicine Postgraduate Degrees Coordinator at Avondale College. And tonight I have the pleasure of introducing Associate Professor Darren Morton to you. So let me just tell you a little bit about him, and some of you may know him well, others may not know him at all. So firstly, Darren is an internationally recognised wellbeing researcher and educator. He's the Director of the Lifestyle and Health Research Centre at Avondale University College, and is also a Fellow of the Australasian Society of Lifestyle Medicine. You may not know this, but he's one of just 4 people worldwide that was asked to write into the board certification exam for the International Board of Lifestyle Medicine. He's the author of 4 books and also the author of more than 60 journal articles in scientific and medical journals. Darren has made media appearances around the world and has presented to hundreds of people in different countries on the area of well-being. You may not know this, but Darren is also the world expert on being a pain in the side, or the runner's stitch. Even though he doesn't focus too much on that these days, he's much more into pleasure than pain. But he is the world expert and is sought after when people want to know about the runner's stitch. Another thing that Darren is passionately interested in these days is actually helping people to live their best life. And as a result of that, he's passionate about developing wellbeing programs, and at the moment he's getting the LIFT project known all around the world, and it's used in 10 countries around the world as we speak. A program that was developed only in the last few years by Darren. In his spare time, he loves being active outdoors, spending time with his family and with his friends. And it's a delight to be able to introduce you tonight, Darren. It's usually you doing the introducing for many other people, but I can truly say that Darren happens to be one of my very favourite speakers. Been to a lot of conferences, and you just have to follow the noise. Usually it's singing or laughing, and you'll find Darren being the speaker. So I know that you'll really enjoy the presentation tonight. So without further ado, I'm going to put myself on mute and ask Darren to share away on this amazing topic, the evidence-based strategies for increasing wellbeing. Thanks, Darren.
Thank you, Mel. Can you hear me okay? Oh, that's a good thing. I was a little bit nervous then. Zoom, I think, is getting a lot of traffic right at the moment, and every now and then it's doing strange things. So anyway, really nice to be with you. Thank you so much for that introduction. Actually, after an introduction like that, I can hardly wait to hear what I'm about to say. So, but no, look, thank you. It's really nice to be with you guys. Yeah, I want to talk about this topic that I'm very, very passionate about, and I think that is incredibly timely right at the moment, and that is evidence-based strategies for increasing wellbeing. And specifically, I want to be talking about mental wellbeing. But before I do, we need to start with a bit of fun, because fun is not overrated, and it's actually a very important part of mental wellbeing. So I want to start by telling you a little bit about my favourite story. It's actually my favourite story from when my kids were growing up. I used to love reading them stories, and this one's called Some Dogs Do by Jez Alborough. I love this. If you've got kids or grandkids, you need to go buy this and read it to them. But it's all about the story of this little dog called Sid. And it starts off by saying, when Sid set off for school one day, a happy feeling came his way. It filled him up so much he found his paws just lifted off the ground. And without a how, without a why, Sid fell up towards the sky. So Sid's day starts pretty well, and he actually flies to school. And when he arrives at school, he announces this to all his classmates that, hey, guess what? I flew to school today. But he didn't quite get the response he was anticipating, and he got chastised by his classmates. And then his teacher, Miss Mayer, as the story says, Miss Mayer, the teacher, shook her head. Now, Sid, "You shouldn't lie," she said. "All dogs walk and jump and run, but dogs don't fly. It can't be done." And so you can see Sid's body language by now is looking pretty dejected. And then things hit rock bottom literally when his best friend, Gus, invites Sid to come outside and demonstrate just how good he is at flying then if he can do it. And so he says, "Come on, come outside, let's see you try." And Sid has a go at it, and you can see it doesn't end well. And Sid's concluding comment is, "Well, you see, you're just a dog," said Gus, "with paws for walking just like us. That will teach you not to lie, because now you know that dogs don't fly." And as the story unfolds, Sid, when he walks home that day, it's a long and lonely way. And it's a sad story. You can see his body language here. But at the end, as all good stories should, it turns well, because Sid discovers that, in fact, his dad can fly too. And all of a sudden, seeing someone else fly, particularly someone close to him, makes him lift off the ground as well, and then discovers that mum can do it too. And it's a happy day. So the book concludes with this line. It says, "So do dogs fly? Is it true? Well, some dogs don't, but some dogs do." Anyway, I remember reading this story to a graduation class, a university graduating class one time, and I asked them, "What's the moral of the story?" Anyway, one graduating student was quick to put up their hand and said, "The moral of the story is that teachers have no idea what they're talking about." And I'm thinking, And then someone else quickly put up their hand and said, "Yes." And they said, "Your parents keep secrets from you." Because Sid didn't know that his mum and dad could fly previous to that. And I said, "Well, yes, they do keep secrets from you, but that's not the point of the story. The moral of the story that I draw from it is this: how you feel affects whether you fly or whether you fall." So I'll say it again: how you feel affects whether you fly or whether you fall. And I have come to understand that pretty much that truth relates to, I would say, every aspect of our life. We've got a lot of data and a lot of evidence now suggests that how you feel, right, so your emotional state, has a tremendous impact on your health outcomes, as I'll elaborate in just a moment. It has impact on your relationships. It has an impact on your work performance. Pretty much every aspect of your life is influenced by how you feel. And I think that most of us, if we're honest, can attest to that. Hence is why there is a growing interest in this word that's often sort of thrown around, but loosely speaking, we call it wellbeing. And wellbeing is very intense, very focused on what can we do to actually feel better, to be in a better place. And look, it's quite a complex construct, the whole idea of wellbeing. There are different domains to it, which sometimes we talk about hedonic wellbeing, which is sort of, just feeling good and doing stuff that makes us feel good. And sometimes we're down on that. We think, "Oh, that sounds a bit sort of self-indulgent," but the reality is we all want to feel good. So as long as you go about it in the right way, hedonic wellbeing is quite a positive thing. And then there's this other type of wellbeing that we sometimes refer to as eudaimonic wellbeing, which is more the deeper, satisfaction with life. And we'll talk about some of the pathways that lead to that as we go on. So this whole idea of well-being, is being thrown around lots, and we hear a lot about it. But what does it actually mean? Well, if I had to sum it up, this is what I like to use. I talk about well-being is feeling good and feeling good about life. And that second part I've come to understand, I think, is really the heart of the matter in many ways. In fact, it's possible to not feel so good, but yet people can still report quite a high level of well-being. Their satisfaction, overall satisfaction with life and how they feel about life can be quite positive. I'll maybe return to that theme a little bit later, but a big part of feeling good about life is feeling good about yourself. And there are a whole heap of deeper issues that come to the fore with that. We start talking about things like identity, where we get our sense of self-worth from. And I'll talk about them and elaborate them in just a little while. So this being the case, this whole idea of well-being being such a topical thing. And if well-being is feeling good and it's about feeling good about life, why is there such a great interest in it at the moment? Increasingly so. And I want to purport to you is that the reason for that is that so many people today are feeling like this. Right? So there are a lot of people today that actually are not feeling good and are not feeling good about life. And so I spend most of my time and most of my research and my waking hours reflecting and studying and researching how we can actually help people transition from looking like that to looking more like this. And look, that's a really worthy task, because as I said, people, and look, I think this is the whole corona, the COVID-19 issue is obviously a grave concern. It's unprecedented in terms of the health challenges we're seeing. But to be honest, you know what I think is going to be the major repercussions of this? It's going to be the economic downturn, but what goes along with that is the mental health crisis that will follow. And this is the thing that really has me anxious, I suppose. That's probably the word for it. And I think this is a really concerning thing. And the reason I think this is so concerning is because we've been watching this mental well-being concern just build for the last decade or so. As evidenced by things like this. These are the number of searches that are done on things like how to stop depression, how to stop anxiety. What you can see, this is starting from about 2004 up to the present day. And if the red line represents depression and interest in depression, and obviously people looking for solutions, you can see there's a gradual increase in that. But it's the anxiety, and the two are coupled, the two are linked. Obviously, they can go hand in hand. But what we're seeing is this. It's almost like the baseline level of anxiety within our society is just progressively building and increasing. And then you cap it off with an event like this. I think that we're in for some really unprecedented times in terms of the mental health crisis that we'll see ensue from this. If we look at some of the other statistics, we know today amongst adults, about 1 in 10 Australian adults are taking an antidepressant each day. And I want to say, even though I come from the lifestyle medicine discipline, the lifestyle medicine is not against medication. So it has its place. But what this to me says, and I might add that in the past decade, that figure has doubled. The trajectory is going all the wrong way. In the US, it's about 1 in 8. Some states, as much as 1 in 6 people taking antidepressants each day. And what for me, it's a surrogate. It's a sign that many people are not feeling good, and they're not feeling good about life, and they're looking for solutions. They're reaching out for solutions. I was interested in this survey. It came, obviously, young people I have a particular burden for them, but it was interesting that the Mission Australia report. Now, they've been conducting this study for about 11 years now. They do an annual snapshot of the society, of young people in particular, see how they're going. Had about 25,000 young people in this particular 2019 round, and you can see some of the things that the young people are volunteering as these are the concerning issues for us. You can see the top one now. I'm not sure if you can see when my cursor's. There we go. The top 3 barriers there. What are the top 3 barriers for achieving post-school goals? It's interesting. They list academic ability as the number one. 20% of young people are reporting that. What's fascinating, we actually know, and we've known this for over 100 years since Lewis Terman first did his work with the genetic studies of genius, the genii, he called it, where he looked at kids with very, very high IQs, and we all expected them to be the standouts in society, and we just realised that no, that's not the case. IQ, academic ability, actually contributes probably about 20% to life success. What's more important, there are these whole other issues relating to more emotional intelligence. And so it's interesting that these students rank the second most important barrier for them of achieving their post-high school goals is mental health. So this is featuring for them. If you then ask them, you can see this column here, the top 3 personal concerns that they have for themselves. What's number 1? Coping with stress. Once again, mental distress. Number 3, just mental health in general. So this is really featuring. And then when you ask them, well, what are the top 3 most important issues in Australia today? Over a third of them are saying it's mental health. What's quite fascinating is you look at the environment. About 34%, for about a third of the young people are saying the environment is a massive concern for us. And that's up, you can see, in the past year from about 9% that reported that up to 34%. I actually think that the environmental issues is one of those other background factors that's contributing to this progressive increase in the baseline anxiety levels of young people and more mature people like us. So, so look, this is a massive issue. What does this do for us? I mean, what does it mean if people are in such, their well-being's not in a good place? What does that mean for us, particularly from a health outcome perspective? Obviously, this presentation is part of the lifestyle medicine course, and so lifestyle medicine, we're particularly interested in health outcomes. And what we know is that, and there's increasing data on this, is that your your mental health, your mental well-being, your emotional state has a very powerful impact on your health outcomes. It's related to heart disease, diabetes, all of these things. Why? Well, there's probably two reasons for it. And the first one is that what we know is that when people are not in a good place emotionally, they tend to practice poorer health behaviours. So this is actually one of the pages in the book, and it says, and this is when Sid has actually walked that long way and lonely way home. And here he is at home, and the book says that once at home with mum and dad, deep inside, he still felt bad. So this is Sid feeling bad. And what's Sid doing? Right? And we can all resonate with this. We're all human. Sid here is being sedentary, so he's not moving. Why? Because he doesn't feel like it. He feels bad. And what else is he doing? Well, he's eating junk food, right? But what intrigued me about this photo, this illustration, is he's got 3 cookies on his plate. Now let's be real, folks. When people are feeling low, who stops at 3 cookies? Like this is the reality. So I actually, when my kids were just tiny little tackers, I said to them, is this what it's like for you when you feel bad? And one of them says, no, it's not quite like that. And I said, why don't you draw me a picture to show me what it's really like? And so here's the picture that they illustrated. And you can see here that Sid, he's being sedentary. He's not doing a lot. But does he have 3 cookies on his plates? No. He has 3 pizzas, you can see in the corner over here. Looks like he's got a McDonald's going on. There's some lollies all over the place. And the truly disturbing thing is that you can see it looks like Sid is now chugging on a Cuban cigar. So things have really gone downhill. And, we can laugh at this, but the reality is that we know that when people are not in a good place emotionally, all of these, substance use increases. We're self-medicating, whether it be food, comfort food. We talk about that. So, smoking, alcohol use. It's a little wonder that when we're not in a good place emotionally, then our health behaviours start to suffer. So that's one reason why health outcomes are going to be heading on the wrong trajectory. But perhaps another really fascinating thing is it's not just our health behaviours that suffer when we're not in a good place emotionally. What we also know is that there is a whole cascade of physiological things that start to happen in our body that set us up for ill health. And it affects pretty much the whole way through. What's interesting is some of the studies, sort of from psychoneuroimmunology, which are testifying to this, are just fascinating. And I don't have time to elaborate on them in detail. For those in the course who will be engaging with the Myth Project now, you're going to learn about this in a lot more detail. But studies like this, this is from researchers from the University of Ohio, where what they did, they actually looked at the impact of marital discord. So they would actually bring couples into a counselling room, and then one time they would create warm fuzzies, and they'd talk about really fluffy, nice stuff, and everyone would be glowing and holding hands, rocking backwards and forwards, singing "You Light Up My Life." And then they would look to see how quickly wounds healed. They would administer a little blister wound on their forearm before these visits. And then they would send them away, monitor, see how long the wounds would take. And then once the wounds had healed, they'd bring them back. And this time they would put them into a counselling session. But this time they would pick a fight. The counsellor would, not so much, not a good counsellor. And what they would then have a heated argument, debate. They would go on their way and they'd watch to see how long these wounds would take. And I mean, the fascinating outcomes of that, things like those wounds will take about 30% longer to heal after this 1 hour, which obviously when you have an animated debate with your spouse, it can often go for a little bit longer than that. You tend not to be over after the hour, but 30% longer. So what we know is that how you feel will affect how you heal. And there's some fascinating science coming through that. So, what we've known for a long time, and I think that the evidence here is very, very strong. I don't think any of us discount that, is that your emotional state, you're not in a good place. We know that depression, for example, is a comorbidity for a whole host of different conditions, physical ailments. So we know that when you're emotionally not in a good place, your health outcomes start to suffer. But here is where it starts to get a bit more positive. And I don't want to dwell on the negative the whole time here. We're meant to be doing something to lift us up a little bit. And so here's when the story starts to turn and become a bit more positive. And I remember first seeing this paper, and this was back in 2004, published in the Lancet. It was the 52 it was the Inter-Heart studies, looking at 52 countries, looking at the factors that contributed to fatal heart attacks. And they did a whole raft of different assessments. And I remember back in 2004, when I was first reading this, I looked at the results, and this is what really intrigued me. And I know, sorry about this being quite hard to see. It's quite a busy slide, but if you can see, honing in, when they looked at what factors had the biggest impact on fatal heart attacks, look at this. It was actually one of the biggest things. And then obviously we had things like smoking, the odds ratio nearly 3 to 1. Height, if you have diabetes, that's obviously, we know that's a very powerful risk factor for heart disease, and so forth and so forth. Abdominal obesity, but look at this. Psychosocial factors were more important than things like fruit and vegetable intake, exercise. I hate to say that because I love exercise, but what we know is that I remember looking at that thinking, wow, psychosocial status having such a tremendous impact on that. It's quite incredible, more so than alcohol intake was the other one. So what sort of was hinting to me back then, but there's been more and more data starting to come through, is showing that yes, whilst we know that negative sort of emotional states, if you can call them that, or have negative health outcomes, positive emotional states are actually productive of positive health outcomes, quite independent. It's not just that you're not experiencing the negative. It's in fact, if you have the positive going for you, they actually independently produces good outcomes. And there's been quite a bit written about this. I like this article. This was titled Healthy Happiness. And what they reported here is the effect of happiness. So we're not talking now about, stopping the negative, trying to get people who are somewhere, like a, -5 or a -7 out of, -10 to +10 on the sort of feel-good ladder. We're not talking about just, okay, we know that if you're in a negative state, that does harm. But what we know is that if you're in a positive state, that actually is very healing. And so it was interesting, that what they've concluded, the effect of happiness on longevity in healthy populations is remarkably strong. The size of the effect is comparable to that of smoking or not. Well, that's pretty powerful. So for me then, what I start to wonder is, we know that a lot of people in not so good place, can we help them move up that ladder? Are there things that we can do? Is it possible? To be more up and less down? And in this project, you'll get to engage with this at a deeper level. But what we actually know is, yes, when it comes to people's, emotional state, we're all doing this. And I should say, I'll make this caveat right from the start. There is no one that can be up here like a 10, 11 out of 10, 24/7. That's just not realistic, right? So if someone's telling you that story, just sort of discount that, because we know that that's not the case. Wise Solomon, once said, there is a time for everything. There is a time to weep. There is a time to cry. There is a time to laugh. And we're all doing this, right? So on our mental health, no one is always, flatlining it. We're sort of doing this. But what seems to be the case, and certainly our research, concurs with this, is that people, yes, there will be times when we're down, and it's appropriate to be down. If you've just had some major life trauma, you're going to be down, and that's appropriate for a time. But I think that most people, it's my actual absolute conviction that most people, most of the time, can be taking a couple of steps up that sort of mental health continuum. Such that, even throughout the course of the day, we do this, but you can be doing it up here more than sort of down here. And so the science seems to suggest that, yes, there are things that we can do to be more up and less down. And they're really coming from two domains. The first one is lifestyle medicine, and lifestyle medicine is essentially it's about treating the cause of chronic physical conditions. Historically, that's what it's been about. Treating the cause of heart disease and diabetes and certain cancers and hypertension and these sorts of things. And what we know is that they are lifestyle-related conditions by and large. And so it makes sense if you want to affect change in them, don't put Band-Aids on them, like we do. Let's treat the cause, the underlying cause, which are lifestyle. Help people to eat better, to move more, to manage their stress, to do all these positive lifestyle behaviours. And it's incredibly powerful. But what's fascinating about lifestyle medicine is that what we're recognising is what's good for your body. What heals your body can also heal your mind. And so we know that many of the lifestyle-based strategies that we've been promoting in the lifestyle medicine space are actually very, very good for your mental health as well. And so it's really encouraging to see lifestyle medicine starting to have more of an intentional interest in mental wellbeing. The second place is positive psychology. And what's fascinating about these two disciplines to me is that they've both emerged in in unison, roughly around about the same duration. It was about 2 decades ago that there was an inkling of them. And then both of these disciplines have just exploded over the past, particularly over the past decade. Positive psychology is not pop psychology. It's not the fluffy sort of smile and your cares will go away. It's the scientific study of what it takes for people to truly flourish in life. And look, my personal mission, and Mel does a lot of work on this, and her PhDs in this area, is at this stage, these two disciplines are not talking lots. Change is coming. In fact, I've got this right here in my book. This is one of my good friends, Dr. Liana Leonov, wrote this book called Roots of Positive Change. I actually wrote one of the chapters in that book for her. And in this book, this is an attempt to start to infiltrate positive psychology into lifestyle medicine. So she was a former president of the American College of Lifestyle Medicine. It's interesting. I feel like it's somewhat of a chameleon because I go to lifestyle medicine conferences and talk about positive psychology, and then I go to positive psychology conferences and talk about lifestyle medicine. So these worlds need to unite. And there are a whole host, a raft of things that we know that are coming from these two worlds that are informing what people can do to feel better on a daily basis, to feel good and to feel good about life. And so in the limited amount of time that we have left, I'm just going to cherry pick and I'm going to share with you 3 strategies. Now, in the LIFT project that the class will be engaging with, there are about 9 or 10 different strategies. But let's just have a look at 3 real quickly so that we can have a positive thing that you can do as you leave this presentation. So the first one is called Motion Creates Emotion. And essentially what we know is that how you move, how you posture your body even. You can see I'm actually here at a standing workstation. I sit some of the time. I try to stand a lot of the time. What we know is that your posture and how you move your body has a powerful impact on your emotional state. In fact, it's even been stated that exercise is the most powerful and yet least utilised antidepressant we have available to us. Certainly, we have studies showing that exercise, and look, I'm even hesitant to use that word exercise because I know for many people, they hear the word exercise and their eyes roll into the back of their head because they go, ah! Because I've in many countries, I've played this word association game where I say to people, just general audience, I say, so when I say this word, you tell me what's the first word that springs to mind for you. And I go, exercise. And these people almost instantly, and like I said, I've done this in several countries, they'll say, pain. That's what springs to mind for me. And I go, yeah, the other common word is sweat. So pain and sweat. Now, Aristotle told us a couple of thousand years ago that people tend to do things, that they move towards things that give them pleasure and they move further away from things that give them pain. And so if that's what we associate exercise with, is pain, is a little wonder that people just don't want to do it. They don't want to go near it. They don't want to engage with it. So nowadays I try, you're an enlightened audience because you're all into this space. So I can freely use the word exercise. But if I'm talking to the general population, I always talk about being active, right? Because active, that sounds positive. Exercise, oh, no. So anyway, the point is we know that being active, physically active, exercising, the more you can move and the more dynamically you can do it, the better off your brain will be for it. There's big cross-sectional studies. I remember there was a study done in the UK that had about 80,000 people. They actually found that people are happiest when they are more active. And why is that a challenge to us? Well, because if you look at the stats on the activity levels of people nowadays, it's on the rapid decline. You can see this little graphic here over the past 100 years. It's actually not even the past 100 years. It sort of started around about the 1970s. We started to see this decline in our activity levels. And over the past couple of decades, with the invention of the internet, although it's saving us right now, it's gone out of control. You know, we're looking at some estimates are up to 70% reductions in daily energy expenditure, which is like the average adult walking about 15 kilometres less every day than they were just a couple of generations ago. What's that doing to us? It's having a massive impact. I have no doubt that in part the mental health crisis that we're seeing, and obviously it's multifactorial, there are many factors contributing to that, but one of them is the downturn in our physical activity levels. And so one of the messages that I love to spread is that just move, move in whatever way you can. The more dynamically, the better. And the studies suggest that within 10 minutes, people will feel better. People report mood lifts within 10 minutes of moving. And so, I even get to the point now, I don't talk about, well, something depends on the audience, but, I think that an important point is, why should you be active? Yeah, okay, it helps with weight loss. Yes, it's good for your heart. Yes, it's good for every organ of your body, pretty much. It helps prevent 35 different chronic conditions that we know about. But the point is, it makes you feel better. If you can move just for 10 minutes or less, it makes you feel better. I believe that it's actually is less than 10 minutes. It's just the studies haven't tested anything shorter than 10 minutes. And you guys are lucky, because if you were in a room with me right now, I would actually make you, well, that sounds terrible, doesn't it? That's very forceful. I would encourage you, I would invite you to join the Wiggles. They've got this, maybe you want to, it can be your homework. This is called One Finger, One Thumb, Keep Moving. And I get people to follow along the actions. It goes for about 90 seconds. I can guarantee you, if you follow along with those actions, it's a bit of fun. After 90 seconds, you feel better for it. Your mood lift can happen very, very quickly. So people need to start moving more. And they need to do it just because it'll make them feel better. And who doesn't want to feel that? Just to give you a preview for your YouTube. One finger, one thumb, keep moving. One finger, one thumb, keep moving. Good on you. There you go. Well done, Anthony. He knows. You listen to Anthony. He's worth listening to. Hey, what I will say about this too. So motion creates emotion. There is some good studies showing that some places are better to be active than others. And it's interesting, there's a lot of data coming out now showing the value of being in outdoor spaces. And so one of the little slogans that I have, and I'll show it in just a moment, is blue and green should often be seen. Those green spaces, particularly light, natural bright light, is very, very powerful. It was interesting, this study here done in the city of Auckland in New Zealand, by the New Zealand researchers here, they actually found that when you look at the prevalence of depression and anxiety in the city of Auckland, it actually clusters around places that don't have a lot of blue and green space. And actually found here that for every 1% increase in green space, that close to people's homes, there was about a 4% reduction in anxiety disorders. It's very, very interesting. We have there's a whole session in the LIFT project called Blue and Green Should Often Be Seen. We look at the science in more detail about that. But you think about this, if you doubled your green space access, so that's a 100% increase, you're looking at about a 400% reduction in anxiety disorders. So this is very, very powerful. So blue and green should often be seen. Motion creates emotion. Takeaway message, get outside and be active as often as you can. Really good for your brain, really good for a mood lift. That is a strategy that is coming out of the lifestyle medicine space. Let me talk about the other discipline, positive psychology, and I'll share with you this one. This is called Feelings Follow Your Focus. And it's all about looking to the positive. We know, the neuroscience is pretty clear that your prefrontal cortex is actually wired to the part of your brain that is responsible for your emotional state. So, or largely governs your emotional state. So this is the limbic region of the brain. You'll see in the Lift Project, I call it the limbo because I'm an Aussie and we give nicknames to everything. But we know that there's this link, between what you give your attention to. This is what our frontal cortex does. What we focus on will affect how we feel because it's influencing our emotional brain. We also know that it goes the other way as well. And so how you feel, so your emotional state will tend to influence what you focus on. So I actually call these things limbo loops, limbic system loops where focus feeds feelings, feeds focus. And that's why we can get in these upward and downward spirals. And I know that you've all encountered them to at some point in your life, maybe on a daily basis, these upward and downward spirals. What I find very intriguing and I suppose alarming, but also offering an opportunity is this whole notion of brain plasticity. Now, we actually know that how you use your brain will influence how it grows and how it modifies. And so, if you actually, it may be that if you practice, say, downward spirals, you get better at that. You ingrain those pathways. We talk about neurons that fire together, wire together. These things become, super highways in our brain. But the opportunity is that if we practice, and it takes practice, takes intentionality, but if we practice activating positive pathways, then we will etch them in deeper too, and we can get better at that. And so there is, in the positive psychology space, which once again, it's not pop psychology, this is the scientific study of what it takes to help people flourish. We know that focusing on very positive questions that relate to positivity in the past, in the present, and in the future are very, very uplifting. And so let me share with you 3 of the questions that they often use in the positive psychology space. Number 1, what am I truly grateful for? This whole concept of gratitude is just coming to the fore as one of the most important things that people can do to be in a positive place emotionally. And look, I know, as you know, I'm sure that you've lived long enough to know that life has some really sucky aspects and things happen that we just don't wish for. But focusing and choosing intentionally to hone in, even in those times, on things that we are grateful for, that we're thankful for, can actually be a game changer in terms of our emotional state. And see, what we know is that what gratitude does is shift your focus from what you don't have to what you do have. And that's incredibly powerful. One of the really common tests that's used, or experiments that's used in the positive psychology space, is called the gratitude visit. And maybe this is your second bit of homework after you dance to the Wiggles. And that is they invite people to identify someone who is living at the time that has had a significant positive influence on their life. Then they get them to write down a few paragraphs, that person and their influence that they've had, what they've meant to them personally. And then the really challenging part is to actually go and read it to that person. And what's fascinating about that is that the data, and you can see these are randomized control trials, where you can see the people, the placebo group, this is their happiness over the next 6 months. Here is the control group, the gratitude visit group. You can see a very significant spike in their happiness immediately on doing the test. And I've actually done this experiment myself, and I can concur that this is the case. I'll give you the heads up in one of the lessons, lesson 5, which is feelings follow your focus. Your challenge for the week is actually to do this very thing. So see how it goes for you. But what's interesting, if you look at the data here, is that there are still significant improvements in these people's, this is the people who delivered it, not the people who received the compliments, but who delivered the gratitude visit for up to 1 month after the event. Very, very powerful. So this question, what am I truly grateful for? Taking time to reflect on that can be incredibly powerful for our mood state. Here's question number 2. What went well? So what they do here, the researchers, they say at the end of each day, I want you to pull out a pen and paper, get a journal, and write down and give good attention to it. Really focus on it, because that then will affect how you feel. Focus on what went well. Write down 3 things that went well that day. And sometimes you have to think pretty hard. It's hard to come up with 3. But if you look hard enough, normally you can find it. And what's interesting about this one, and this study intrigues me. This is Martin Seligman and his team. you can actually see as these people start to engage with this experiment, this progressive increase in their happiness and over the control group. And look at this, it's actually progressively increasing over the next 6 months. Now, I can tell you as a researcher, we know that often what we do is we actually do some sort of intervention about here to someone, and then we see an effect like they did in the gratitude visit, and then you watch sort of this recidivist, you watch the effect, the treatment effect dwindle off to nothing. This one here was progressively increasing after 6 months. They've actually done follow-ups after 2 years. The people that kept doing this were reporting significantly great increases in their mental well-being. What went well? What am I grateful for? 2 great questions. And here's the third one. You see, thinking about what you're grateful for is thinking positively about the past. What went well today is about focusing on positivity in the present. And this one is focusing on positivity for the future. This is a message that young people, maybe all people, need to be hearing at times like this. There's just massive uncertainty, and people are struggling and reeling and not quite sure, what's going to happen. And that creates anxiety, of course. That whole idea of still having a positive focus and anticipation towards the future is just so important. There's a lot of literature now being published in the space of hope. Actually, they call it hope theory, as Snyder did a lot of the early work on this, but a lot of research coming forward now showing, and what is hope? Hope is having a positive expectation about the future and a sense of agency that you can get there. That's what hope is. And we know that quite literally, hope is life-giving. Hope is life-giving. People need that. They need that spoken into their life. And, we also need something to look forward to. We need that sense of excitement, like that little girl in the roller skates. Thanks, Mel, for the photo, by the way. Sorry, that was not Mel. I just thought I'd throw that in there. I'm not very nice, am I? It's a good photo. Anyway, that whole having something that you're excited about, something you're looking forward to. Don't get over that as you get older, right? Don't grow old enough that you don't get excited about stuff. Keep that alive. But that whole idea of hope, I keep returning to that. It was John Lennon that made this quote one time, and I love it. He says, everything will be okay in the end. If it's not okay, well, it's just not the end. And I think that sort of sentiment is what needs to be spoken in days like that we're facing at the moment. So, feelings follow your focus. It's one thing, that whole idea of focusing on positive things. It's very prominent in the positive psychology literature. And so that's from positive psychology. I spoke a little bit about lifestyle medicine, the whole idea of motion creates emotion, and blue and green should often be seen getting outside. I want to leave you with this one. This is quick, but I said at the start that what wellbeing is feeling good. Right? And those 2 strategies I've described, we know the evidence is very, very powerful. They can help you do that. They can help you, people, feel good. And some of them work as quick as that. Right? So why wouldn't we be communicating that? But I also said wellbeing is more than that. Wellbeing is feeling good, but feeling good about life. I have a tremendous burden for young people suffering mental health issues. I just see it all too often. I've got 3 teenage kids of my own, who struggle at times, and I look at their friends and my heart just goes out to them. And what I've come to the realization that probably the most important thing that they need is not just things to help them feel good, because we can go about that in the wrong ways. Right? We all can. There are positive ways too, and we should be practicing them. But I think I've come to understand probably the antidote to depression is not so much doing things to feel good, it's doing things to feel good about ourselves. Right? It's not just doing things to feel good, it's doing things to feel good about ourselves. And how do we do that? Well, you know what? The science is pretty clear. For people to feel good about themselves, that comes through connection, and it comes through contribution. And so I'll leave you this last strategy, and this actually comes later on in the LIFT project, but I call it giving is living. And it's interesting, from Martin Seligman, Professor Martin Seligman, widely considered the father of the positive psychology movement. he wrote this, and I think these words are just so powerful. He says, doing a kindness produces the single most reliable increase in well-being, happiness of any exercise we've ever tested. What is that about? Doing something for someone else, right? And I could spend a lot of time talking about how, that gets people outside themselves. They don't internalize as much when you're focused on someone external to yourself. I could tell you about, I believe that there's a law that governs our emotional state that says that you reap what you sow. So if you give, you tend to get positive. But beyond that, I think that this whole idea of getting people to contribute makes them feel good about themselves. It's that deeper realization of well-being. It's really interesting. I saw this in Scientific American Mind some time back now. And I was reading this article. It was called The Samaritan Paradox. And the authors were wrestling with this idea of, why do we help? They were saying, why is it that we would give money, say, to people on the other side of the planet when there's no chance of reciprocation? Why would you do that? Why would we go and fly across the other side of the world and actually put in a water main for, drill water for them or do whatever? Why would we do that when they're not going to be able to reciprocate that? And this is what they said. They said, our species is apparently the only one with a genetic makeup that promotes selflessness and true altruistic behaviour. It's like there's something knit into our very fabric, which just, like in the words of Abraham Lincoln, who once said, when I do good, I feel good. And you don't just feel good, you feel good about yourself. It's incredibly powerful. What it does effectively is promote a sense of meaning. And, we actually know that in the positive psychology space, probably one of the most fundamental needs that people have is a sense of meaning in their life. And the literature is, really fascinating where that comes from. Having a sense of meaning comes from feeling that you belong to and that you contribute to something bigger than yourself, that you have moments of transcendence, awe, and that you feel that your story counts, that your story is part of a bigger narrative as well. And so, this is this whole pathway to feeling better. Punchline: giving is living. Giving is living. And I think that you may find, just even from your own experience, often the people that are most emotionally robust are those people who have that orientation, that aptitude in the way they approach their life. So, motion creates emotion. Blue and green should often be seen. Lifestyle medicine space, that's telling us that, amongst other things. Feelings follow your focus. The positive psychology space is telling us that above all of that, that whole idea of giving is living, having a sense of service. And if we can engage with people like that, I've cherry-picked, as I said, 3 things. There are about 9 to 10 different things that are coming out from these 2 disciplines, things that we can do, evidence-based things. The science is strong, showing that we can use these to put ourselves in a better place on a more regular basis. And that is such a worthwhile thing to do because, you know what, at the moment, some dogs do. I think that a whole lot more dogs do. More dogs can fly. And in doing that, if more people flying, and less people falling, wow, I think that would make the whole world a whole lot better place. And by putting people in that positive place, when you're flying, you actually have a greater capacity to do good. It's really difficult to pour from an empty cup. And so my mission is to share this. For those in the class, this is what we're going to be exploring for this next semester. We're going to be engaging this thing called the LIFT project, where we're going to learn about those things, not just in theory, but in practice. So it's going to be experiential. And I really hope that you enjoy this. And it's not just educative, but it's actually quite transformational in your own right. So, my friends, I would really invite you to take on board, maybe experiment with some of the things that I've shared with you in this presentation. And even more importantly than that, share them with someone else who needs to hear them. Thank you.
Thank you, Darren. That was excellent. Really, really enjoyed that presentation. And what I